English Bridge Podcast.
From your favorite healing space.
The average person spends 4 hours a day commuting, but that's not what's stealing your life. It's the invisible work your brain is doing during every minute of that time, the mental loops, the emotional performance, the constant low-level vigilance, and nobody's measuring that cost.
I had a student in Shanghai who quit a job she loved because the commute made her feel like she was disappearing. She couldn't explain why. She just knew something was draining her faster than the hours on the clock. That's what we're unpacking today.
Because the real theft isn't happening on the train, it's happening inside your head, and most people don't even know it's going on.
Welcome back to English Bridge. I'm Cheryl, and I spent 3 years teaching English in Asia, watching students work 12-hour days and then vanish into 2-hour commutes. They'd show up to class exhausted, but they couldn't name what was draining them. It wasn't just the time, it was something deeper.
And I'm Noah. I have a psychology degree and worked as a counselor before teaching English. I saw clients who were technically getting enough sleep, technically eating well, but they were running on empty. When we dug into it, the commute kept coming up, not just as wasted time, but as this invisible energy vampire.
For me, it hit hardest when I moved to Taipei and suddenly had a 40-minute metro ride twice a day. I thought I'd read, relax, decompress, but instead I just felt more drained, like I was working even when I wasn't working.
And that's the paradox I kept seeing in therapy sessions. People would say, "I'm just sitting on a bus, why am I so tired?" But from a psychological standpoint, your brain doesn't distinguish between physical labor and cognitive labor. Sitting still while managing anxiety, planning, ruminating, that burns fuel.
So Noah, what you're saying is the commute isn't stealing hours, it's stealing energy we didn't know we were spending?
Exactly. And today we're breaking down why that happens, what your brain is actually doing during those hours, and how to stop the bleed. Because once you see the invisible work, you can finally address it.
We're going to walk through 5 scenarios that'll feel uncomfortably familiar, the mental patterns that turn a train ride into a second job. Then we'll dig into the psychology behind it, share some real stories from people who changed this, and give you practical tools you can use tomorrow.
This episode is for anyone who feels like they're losing themselves in the in-between moments. The commuters, the multi-stop parents, the people who feel exhausted before the day even starts.
And honestly, even if you work from home, this applies to you too, because the commute is just a metaphor for all the invisible mental labor we do without realizing it.
We're going to start by painting the feeling. No analysis yet. Just holding up a mirror so you can see what's actually happening in your head during those hours. Because most people have never stopped to look.
And once you see it, Noah, you can't unsee it. That's when the real work begins.
Let's start with the most common pattern I heard in counseling, what I call the mental browser tabs.
Oh, I love that metaphor already. Tell me more.
You're sitting on the train, physically still, and you think you're resting. But your brain has 20 tabs open. The email you didn't send, the grocery list, the conversation you need to have with your boss, the thing your partner said this morning that didn't sit right.
And every single one of those tabs is using energy, even if you're not actively clicking on them. I used to do this on the metro in Taipei. I'd close my eyes and think I was relaxing, but my mind was just racing through everything I hadn't finished.
That's the trap. You're not moving, so you think you're recharging. But your prefrontal cortex is running a full workload, planning, worrying, rehearsing conversations that haven't happened yet. It's like leaving your laptop open with 20 programs running and wondering why the battery dies.
And then you get home and someone asks, "How was your day?" And you can't even remember the commute because you weren't present for a single minute of it. You were just managing chaos in your head.
Worse, you arrive home more anxious than when you left work because you spent an hour amplifying problems instead of solving them. The commute becomes an incubator for stress.
So you walk in the door already defeated, and your evening hasn't even started yet. That's the invisible cost. You lost your recovery time before you even knew you needed it.
Here's the second pattern, the always on-call feeling. Even on your day off, even when nobody's actually asking anything of you, your nervous system is primed like you're about to get tapped on the shoulder.
Oh, I felt this so hard when I was teaching. Sundays were supposed to be my rest day, but I'd be at a cafe and my phone would buzz and my whole body would tense up before I even looked at the screen. It was never an emergency, but my brain didn't know that.
That's your autonomic nervous system stuck in a low-level fight-or-flight state. You're not actively stressed. But you're never fully relaxed either. It's like living with one foot on the brake and one on the gas. You're burning fuel just to stay still.
So you're exhausted from things that didn't even happen, from emails that didn't come, from problems you imagined, from disasters you prepared for that never showed up.
Exactly. Your body is responding to hypothetical threats as if they're real. That's why people say, I didn't even do anything today. Why am I so tired? Because vigilance is work, Cheryl. Constant readiness is work.
And nobody sees that work, so nobody validates it. You just feel lazy for being tired when you didn't do anything. Let me tell you about the third thing I see all the time.
Go ahead. I think I know where you're going with this.
It's the paralysis of choice. You finally get a free Saturday, no obligations, total freedom, and it feels like a burden. You spend 2 hours deciding what to do, scrolling options, weighing pros and cons, and then the day's half over and you've done nothing.
That's decision fatigue meeting the paradox of choice. You've been making hundreds of micro decisions all week. What to wear, what to eat, how to respond to that text, which task to do first. By the time you get a free day, your willpower tank is empty.
So freedom requires energy you don't have. I had a friend in Seoul who would literally cry on Sunday mornings because she had a whole day to herself and couldn't figure out how to use it. She felt guilty for wasting it, but too paralyzed to choose anything.
And here's the irony. If someone had just told her what to do, she would have been fine. But autonomy, real autonomy, requires decision-making capacity. And when that's depleted, freedom feels like punishment.
It's like being handed a gift you're too tired to unwrap. You know it's supposed to be good, but you can't access it.
That's a perfect way to put it. And it leads directly into the fourth pattern.
Which is what, Noah?
Invisible emotional labor. You spend all day managing other people's emotions, calming down an upset customer, reassuring your boss, performing enthusiasm in a meeting when you're actually bored, pretending you're fine when a coworker vents at you.
Oh, this was my life teaching English in Shanghai. I'd have back-to-back classes with students who were stressed about exams, and I had to be upbeat and encouraging for 8 hours straight, even when I was having a terrible day myself.
That's emotional regulation work, and it's one of the most draining cognitive tasks we do. Your prefrontal cortex has to suppress your real emotions, generate the appropriate ones, and monitor whether your performance is convincing. It's exhausting.
And nobody sees that work. They see you smiling, so they think you're fine. They don't see the effort it took to produce that smile when you wanted to scream.
You're wearing a mask all day, and the mask itself has weight. By the time you're alone, you're too tired to even figure out what your real face looks like underneath.
So you get home and someone asks how you're feeling, and you genuinely don't know because you've been performing for so long you lost track of the truth. That's when the fifth pattern kicks in.
Tell me, what's the fifth one you're thinking of?
The comparison trap. You're sitting on the train, exhausted, scrolling social media, and everyone else looks like they're thriving. Someone ran a marathon, someone launched a business, someone's on vacation in Bali, and you're just trying to survive Tuesday.
And your brain doesn't register that you're comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. You just feel the gap between where you are and where you think you should be, and it makes the exhaustion feel like failure.
I had a student who would spend her whole commute looking at Instagram, and by the time she got home, she felt like she'd wasted her entire life. Not because anything bad happened, just because everyone else seemed further ahead.
That's the thief hiding in plain sight. The commute gives you just enough idle time to spiral into comparison, but not enough time to actually do anything productive. So you end up stuck in the worst of both worlds.
You're too tired to take action, but not tired enough to stop judging yourself for being tired. It's like quicksand. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink.
And that's the emotional landscape of the modern commute. 5 invisible patterns running in the background, draining you without your permission. Now let's talk about why this happens, because once you understand the mechanics, you can intervene.
Okay, Noah, break it down for me. Why is my brain doing this? What's happening under the hood?
First cause, cognitive load and something called the Zeigarnik effect. Your brain uses about 20% of your body's energy despite being only 2% of your weight, and it has a bias toward unfinished tasks. They create what psychologists call open loops that keep demanding attention.
Wait, so that half-written email is louder in my brain than the 10 emails I already sent and finished?
Exactly. Completed tasks close the loop and fade into the background. Unfinished ones stay active, like apps running in the background of your phone. And during the commute, when you have no way to actually complete those tasks, your brain just keeps cycling through them.
So I'm sitting there replaying the same unfinished business over and over, burning energy but getting nowhere. It's like running on a mental treadmill.
That's why people feel more tired after a commute than after an hour of focused work. Work gives you closure. The commute just gives you rumination.
Okay, that makes sense. What's the second reason?
Emotional labor, which we touched on earlier. It's the work of managing your feelings to meet social or professional requirements. Smiling when you're frustrated. Staying calm when you're anxious. Acting interested when you're bored.
So, like when a passenger is being difficult on a flight and the flight attendant has to stay polite and helpful even though internally they're furious?
That's the classic example, but it applies to almost every job now. Teachers, nurses, customer service reps, even office workers in open-plan spaces where you're always on and visible. You can't just feel your feelings. You have to curate them.
When I was teaching in Taipei, I had classes right after lunch when I was exhausted, but I had to perform energy and enthusiasm because the students were paying for that experience. Some days it felt like I was dragging a boulder uphill just to maintain the performance.
And here's the neuroscience. Emotional regulation uses the same brain resources as decision-making and self-control. So every time you suppress irritation or fake enthusiasm, you're depleting the same willpower tank you need for everything else.
Which is why by the time you get home, you have nothing left for the people you actually care about. You spent it all on strangers.
And that connects to the third cause, which is cultural. Cheryl, you lived in collectivist cultures. You saw this up close.
I did, yeah. But Noah, why does this emotional labor thing seem even bigger in places like Taiwan and Korea? Is it just because the work culture is more intense?
Partly, but it's also about collectivist versus individualist norms. In collectivist cultures, maintaining group harmony is a core value, which means you're constantly reading the room, adjusting your behavior to avoid conflict, managing not just your emotions but everyone else's comfort level.
So you're exhausted not from what you did, but from what you didn't say. From all the times you bit your tongue, smoothed things over, prioritized the group's feelings over your own truth.
Exactly. And even in individualist cultures like the US, we're seeing this increase because of social media and the service economy. Everyone's performing all the time now, curating their online persona, managing their professional brand. The stage got bigger, but the exhaustion is the same.
So we're all doing emotional labor. We're not trained for and nobody's paying us for. That's bleak, Noah.
It is. And the fourth cause makes it worse: decision fatigue. The average person makes about 35,000 decisions a day, most of them tiny and unconscious, but each one depletes a finite resource.
Wait, give me a real example. What does decision fatigue actually look like in daily life?
You get home after work, sit down to watch something, and spend 30 minutes scrolling Netflix without choosing anything. Not because you're picky, but because your decision-making capacity is just gone. Your brain is tapped out.
Oh, I've done that so many times. Or I'll stand in front of the fridge for 5 minutes, not because I'm not hungry, but because I can't decide what to eat. And then I feel ridiculous because it's such a simple choice.
But it's not simple when you've already made 1,000 choices that day. What to wear, what route to take, how to phrase that email, whether to speak up in the meeting, what tone to use with your coworker. By evening, even small decisions feel insurmountable.
So the commute isn't just stealing time. It's stealing the mental energy we need to make good choices later. That's why people end up doom scrolling or binge eating or making bad decisions at night. They're running on fumes.
Exactly. And now that we understand the mechanics, let me tell you about someone who lived this for years without realizing it.
I'm listening.
Her name was Priya, 32, worked in marketing in Boston. Hour-long commute each way, packed train, no seat most days. She came to me because she thought she had depression. Sleeping fine, eating fine, but couldn't feel anything anymore. Just numb.
That's heartbreaking. When you're doing everything right on paper, but you still feel like you're disappearing.
We mapped her day and the pattern was brutal. She'd spend the morning commute mentally rehearsing her presentations, catastrophizing about meetings. The evening commute replaying everything she said wrong, planning tomorrow's damage control. 2 hours a day of pure rumination.
But Noah, why didn't she just listen to music or read a book? Distract herself? What held her back from doing something different?
Because she genuinely believed that mental rehearsal was productive. She thought she was preparing, problem-solving, getting ahead. She didn't realize she was just spinning her wheels, creating anxiety without resolution.
So her brain tricked her into thinking the rumination was useful work, when really it was just draining her.
Exactly. And by the time she got home, she had no capacity left for her actual life. She'd order takeout, scroll her phone, go to bed. She wasn't living, she was just recovering enough to do it again tomorrow.
What finally shifted for her?
I asked her to try 1 week of what I called commute blackout. No work thoughts allowed. Just music, podcasts, staring out the window. She resisted hard, said it felt irresponsible.
Of course she did, because her identity was wrapped up in being the person who was always thinking ahead, always prepared.
But she tried it, and by day 3 she called me almost in tears because she realized she'd been holding her breath for 2 years. Literally, shallow breathing, tight chest, the whole commute. She hadn't even noticed.
Oh, that makes me so sad. Your body was sending distress signals the whole time, but you were too busy ruminating to hear them.
That's the lesson from Priya's story. The commute isn't the problem. It's the mirror that shows you what your brain's been doing all along. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
That reminds me of someone I knew when I was teaching in Shanghai. Total opposite situation, but same underlying pattern.
I'm curious. Tell me more, Cheryl.
His name was David, 28, finance job, hour-and-a-half commute each way on the Shanghai Metro. But he loved it at first. He'd listen to podcasts, read books, felt like he was using the time well. Super productive.
So what changed? That sounds like he was handling it well.
6 months in, he started having panic attacks on the train. Out of nowhere, heart racing, couldn't breathe, thought he was dying. He went to doctors, got tests done. Everything came back normal.
Let me guess. The panic wasn't about the train. The train was just where his nervous system finally said, I can't hold this anymore.
Exactly. Turns out he was listening to self-improvement podcasts and business books the entire commute, every single day. He thought he was being productive, but he was actually never letting his brain rest. He was in input mode for 3 hours a day on top of a 10-hour workday.
So his commute wasn't a break from work. It was an extension of work. He was optimizing himself into a breakdown.
The turning point came when his girlfriend suggested he just listen to music for 1 week. No podcasts, no learning, just music. He thought it was a waste of time, but he was desperate.
And his nervous system finally got permission to stand down.
Within 2 weeks, the panic attack stopped. He told me it felt like he'd been holding a conversation for 6 months without taking a breath, and music was the first pause. He didn't realize how much he needed silence until he tried it.
That connects perfectly to another client I had. Let me tell you about Marcus.
Go for it.
Marcus was a teacher, 40-minute drive each way, and he'd spend the whole drive in his head, replaying difficult conversations with students, planning lessons, worrying about parent emails. He knew it was draining him, but he couldn't figure out how to stop.
Okay, but Noah, how did you get him to change? Because just telling someone to stop ruminating won't work. The thoughts come automatically.
You're right. So I gave him the micro-experiment. For 1 week, his only job during the commute was to narrate what he saw out loud. Like a nature documentary. There's a red car, now a stop sign. That tree has no leaves. Ridiculous, but specific.
Wait, that's genius. You're hijacking the verbal loop in his brain so it can't ruminate?
Exactly. He felt silly doing it. But by day 2, he noticed something. His jaw wasn't clenched anymore. He'd been grinding his teeth the whole drive for months and didn't realize it until he stopped.
So his body was screaming at him, but he couldn't hear it over the mental noise.
Right? And within 2 weeks, he said he actually started enjoying the drive. Not because anything external changed, but because he stopped using it as a torture chamber for his own thoughts.
That's so good. It reminds me of one more student I had. This one's a little different, but it ties in.
I feel for her already. Creative fields plus social media is a brutal combination.
Her name was Sophie, 25, graphic designer, worked from home, so technically no commute. But she'd spend 2 hours a day on Instagram looking at other designers' work, telling herself it was research.
Let me guess. It wasn't research. It was self-torture disguised as productivity.
Exactly. She'd see someone younger than her with more followers, better clients, cooler projects, and she'd spiral. By the time she actually sat down to work, she felt like a fraud. She'd stare at a blank screen for hours.
But why didn't she just stop looking at Instagram? What kept pulling her back?
Fear. She was terrified that if she stopped watching what everyone else was doing, she'd fall behind. The scrolling felt like staying competitive, but really it was just feeding her imposter syndrome.
That's the collector's fallacy meeting comparison anxiety. She was gathering information but not creating anything, and the gap between input and output was crushing her.
The shift happened when she started a no-scroll morning rule, no social media before noon. The first week she was twitchy, constantly reaching for her phone. But by week 3, she told me she'd designed more in that month than in the previous 6 months combined.
Because she stopped poisoning her creative well before she even got to drink from it.
Exactly. And she realized the scrolling wasn't the problem. It was the avoidance. She was scared to make bad work, so she distracted herself by watching other people make good work. Once she named that, she could address it.
That's the thread connecting all 4 stories. Priya, David, Marcus, Sophie. They were all stuck in patterns that felt productive or necessary, but were actually just draining them. And the shift came when they interrupted the pattern with something tiny and specific.
So Noah, what are the early warning signs? How do you know when your commute or your life in general is doing this to you?
Great question. First, pay attention to your body. Chronic tension in your shoulders, jaw clenching, shallow breathing. These are signals your nervous system is stuck in low-level threat mode. Most people ignore them until they become pain.
I had that when I was teaching. I'd get tension headaches every Sunday night, and I thought it was just bad luck. Took me months to realize it was my body raising flags about Monday.
Your body knows before your conscious mind does. Second warning sign, the myth of the perfect moment. If you keep telling yourself, I'll rest properly on vacation, or I'll deal with this after the busy season, but the busy season never ends.
Okay, but Noah, real talk. What if the busy season actually doesn't end? What if your job is just like that?
Then you're not in a busy season. You're in an unsustainable lifestyle, and vacation won't fix it. Vacation is a Band-Aid on a broken bone. You need structural change, not a week in Mexico.
That's harsh, but I think people need to hear it, because so many people are just white-knuckling their way to some future moment that never comes.
Exactly. Third insight, passive rest versus active rest. Scrolling your phone feels like rest because you're physically still, but your brain is still in consumption mode. Real rest is different.
Okay, what does real rest actually look like on a Tuesday when you're tired and you only have an hour?
Active rest is anything that engages you without demanding performance. Walking without a destination, cooking something simple, sitting outside without your phone, talking to a friend about nothing important. The key is presence without pressure.
So it's not about doing nothing. It's about doing something that doesn't require you to produce, perform, or optimize.
Exactly. And here's the last piece. Micro-experiments. Most people fail to change because they try to overhaul their entire life at once. But the brain resists big changes. It trusts small experiments.
Like Marcus narrating his drive, or Sophie's no-scroll mornings. Tiny, specific, weird enough that your brain doesn't see it as a threat.
Right. The goal isn't to fix everything. It's to interrupt one pattern and see what shifts. You're collecting data, not committing to a new identity.
So instead of, I'm going to meditate every day, it's, I'm going to try 5 minutes of silence on my commute this week and notice what happens.
Exactly. And that's how you move from feeling helpless to feeling curious. Because curiosity is the antidote to burnout.
Okay, Noah, that's the theory. But what does someone actually do on Monday morning when they're already exhausted and the commute is staring them in the face?
Monday morning, you pick one micro-experiment. Just one. If your pattern is rumination, try the narration exercise Marcus used. If it's doom scrolling, try Sophie's no-scroll rule for just the commute. If it's decision fatigue, automate one decision tee. Same breakfast every day, same route, same playlist.
So you're not trying to solve the whole problem. You're just creating one tiny pocket of predictability or presence in your day.
Right. And you track how it feels, not how it looks. Did your shoulders drop? Did you feel less dread? That's the data. You're not aiming for perfection. You're aiming for a 10% shift.
I love that because 10% feels doable, 100% feels impossible, so people don't even start.
And here's the thing. Most people discover that the commute was never the real problem. It was just the place where all their unmanaged stress, Unfinished tasks and unprocessed emotions finally had nowhere to hide.
So fixing the commute is really about fixing how you relate to your own mind? That's deep, Noah.
It is. But it's also hopeful, because it means you have more control than you think. You can't always change the commute, but you can change what you do with your attention during it.
All right, let's get practical. What are 5 specific things someone can try this week?
First, do a cognitive load audit. At the end of today, write down every unfinished task that's looping in your head. Emails, conversations, decisions, errands. Get them out of your brain and onto paper. Just the act of externalizing them closes some of the loops.
That's like a brain dump, right? I used to do this with my students before exams. They'd feel lighter just from writing down what they were worried about.
Second, schedule nothing time. Literally block 30 minutes on your calendar with no agenda. Not meditation, not a walk, not productivity. Just space. See what your brain does when it's not being directed.
I'm going to push back on that, Noah. Won't people just fill that time with scrolling or TV?
Maybe at first, but if you commit to doing it 3 times, you'll notice the difference between numbing and resting. Your body knows, even if your mind resists.
Okay, I'll trust you on that. What's the third thing?
Third, complete 1 microcycle. Pick the smallest unfinished task on your list and finish it. Reply to 1 email, put away the laundry, make that phone call. Give your brain the satisfaction of closure. That's how you start to quiet the Zygarnik effect.
So you're teaching your brain that things can actually get finished, not just endlessly recycled.
Exactly. Fourth, name the specific type of tired. Are you physically tired, mentally tired, emotionally tired, or socially tired? They require different solutions. Physical tired needs sleep. Mental tired needs a break from decisions. Emotional tired needs a break from decisions. Emotional tired needs solitude.
Oh, that's so helpful. Because I've definitely tried to solve mental tiredness with a nap and it doesn't work. You wake up still anxious.
Right. And fifth, set 1 boundary this week. Say no to 1 thing, even if it's small. Leave work on time 1 day. Don't answer that text immediately. Protect 1 pocket of your time like it's sacred.
Because if you don't set boundaries, your time will get colonized by everyone else's needs. And then you're just a ghost in your own life.
The commute isn't stealing your life. Your unmanaged attention is. And the moment you take it back, everything shifts.
If you're reading this on your commute right now, I want you to know, you're not lazy. You're not broken. You're just carrying weight you were never taught to put down. And that changes today.
If this conversation resonated with you, send it to someone who needs to hear it today.
And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next. We've got something really good lined up.
I'm Noah.
And I'm Cheryl. See you on the bridge.